When the Second World War broke out, Belfast's linen factories produced millions of uniforms and the shipyards churned out navy vessels. Then, one night in 1941, not long before Jean's 7th birthday, air raid sirens wailed as a formation of Luftwaffe bombers streaked across the waterfront, scattering parachute mines and incendiary bombs, and Harland and Wolff erupted into flame. Educating girls was not much of a priority in working-class Belfast in those days, so when Jean was 14, she left school and went in search of work. She ended up finding a job as a servant for a Catholic widow who lived on nearby Hollywood Road. The widow's name was Mary McConville, and she had a grown son, an only child named Arthur, who served in the British Army. Arthur was 12 years older than Jean and very tall. He towered over Jean, who stood barely 5 feet in her shoes. He came from a long line of soldiers, and he told her stories about how he had gone off to fight the Japanese in Burma during the war. When Jean and Arthur fell in love, the fact that they came from different sides of the religious divide did not go unnoticed by their families. Sectarian tensions were less pronounced during the 1950s than they had been in the past or would become again, but even so, mixed relationships were rare. This was true not just for reasons of tribal solidarity, but because Protestants and Catholics tended to live in circumscribed worlds. They resided in different neighbourhoods, attended different schools, worked different jobs, frequented different pubs. By entering Arthur's mother's house as a domestic employee, Jean had crossed these lines. When she took up with Arthur, his mother resented it. Jean's mother may not have been delighted either, but she accepted the marriage, though one of Jean's uncles, a member of the Orange Order, gave her a beating for the transgression. The young couple eloped to England in 1952 and lived in an army barracks where Arthur was posted, but eventually they returned to Belfast and moved in with Jean's mother in 1957. Jean's first child, Anne, suffered from a rare genetic condition that would leave her hospitalised for much of her life. Anne was soon followed by Robert, Arthur, who was known as Archie, Helen, Agnes, Michael, whom everyone called Mickey, Thomas, whom everyone called Tucker, Susan, and finally the twins, Billy and Jim. Between Jean, her mother, her husband and her children, there were a dozen or so people crammed into the tiny house on Avenel Road. Downstairs was a small front parlour and a kitchen at the back, with an outdoor toilet, an open fire for cooking, and a cold water sink. In 1964, Arthur retired from the army with a pension and set up a small building repair business. But he struggled to stay employed. He found a new job in a Sirocco engineering works, but eventually lost it when his employers discovered that he was Catholic. He held a job in the rope works for a time. Later, the children would recall this period, when the photo was taken, as a happy interlude. There were privations, to be sure, but nothing out of the ordinary for a working-class childhood in post-war Belfast. Their parents were alive. Their existence seemed stable. Their life was intact. But during the 1960s, the mutual suspicion between Catholics and Protestants gradually intensified. When members of the local Orange Order conducted their triumphal summertime marches, they would make a point of starting right outside the McConvilles' door. For years, Ian Paisley had been exhorting his Protestant brethren to seek out and expel Catholics who lived among them. "You people of the Shankill Road, what's wrong with you?" he would bellow. "Number 425 Shankill Road, do you know who lives there? Pope's men, that's who." This was retail ethnic cleansing. Paisley would reel off addresses: 56 Aden Street, 38 Crimea Street. The proprietors of the local ice cream shop? They were papishers, agents of Rome, and they must be driven out. There was no television in the house of Avenel Road, but as the civil rights movement got underway and Northern Ireland became embroiled in riots, Jean and Arthur would visit a neighbour's house and watch the evening news with a growing sense of trepidation.